Well, Mayor, I think we're supposed to have a fireside chat. I think
Yeah,
we're.
I can't sit in this chair. It doesn't look very mayoral with my feet. Sorry.
No, no worries. We are the only thing that stands between these good folks and their happy hour.
Thank you all. It's nice to be with you.
So you've been on the job for it's been quite an 8 weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah, I've been here 8 weeks, not quite 8 weeks yet, and it's been exciting. And if you see any frogs or locusts coming my way, please give me a call because. No, it's been exciting. A lot of change already that I'm proud of. There'll be more, but it was needed. And I ran saying I was going to shake things up, and we're shaking things up to make things better for the citizens of Austin.
It's been a pretty remarkable period. You said yourself it's been a difficult and challenging time. What would you like for people to know about this period, about how the city's working to better respond to the needs of its residents, and most importantly, how's this period reshaped some of your priorities?
Well, that's a great two-part question. The first part is I felt like City Hall and still feel like City Hall needs to get back to basics and be organized for results and then perform when it comes to those results, and to make sure that the form of government that we have, the council manager form of government, is actually working the way it's supposed to work. And what you have seen, I think, thus far is we have discipline that we needed to have so that those kinds of things could happen. I don't believe that the place was organized to get to results. I think it ended up stopping good results that people wanted, and that has resulted in us replacing the city manager and putting in a city manager on an interim basis that is focused on that kind of thing, and you're already starting to see some of that as well. From a perspective of how it changes the way I look at things, that was kind of a foundation that when I went in. I want people to get results. I want people to see their local government actually working and making a difference in their lives. But it probably has changed. It's probably heightened two things. One is when you change city managers and you have a city manager that is an interim. As I look to the future, we're going to need to hire a permanent city manager. And it's going to be very important, I think, that when we hire that permanent city manager, it is someone that can look to the future and not be so what that means is that person needs to be handed a city that is functioning well, that is taking care of the basics, that is providing results, so that person can focus on the future of our city and not have to focus on cleaning up messes. So I think that's one of the differences. And then the other thing I would say is that that it's changed in my perspective is that when we're focusing on results, we need to recognize that they may be delayed. And I may need to be more patient. People may need to be more patient because we are also making structural changes, and that may make it more difficult in some instances.
Appreciate that. We all read the newspapers. A recent study suggested that to afford a one-bedroom apartment, a minimum wage worker would need 3 additional roommates or 4 jobs. Austin again topped Zillow's list of least affordable cities. You've called affordable housing an emergency for Austinites. From a policy perspective, what do you see right now as the low-hanging fruit to address some of the shortage of affordable housing?
Well, there's a couple of things that I'd say about that. One is, and this is a procedural structural thing. I think it's important for us to look for those things where there's agreement. Too often in Austin, we tend to, an idea gets put out and we tend to immediately jump to whatever side we want to be on. And then the debate is all defined by I'm for you or I'm against you. And there's not much room for anything in between. And I don't think over the past decade, I think we've been really pretty stagnant when it comes to affordable housing policy. And part of the reason I think we've been stagnant is because we haven't started with what can we agree on. The second thing is procedural as well, but it leads to the concept of low-hanging fruit, and that is taking the time necessary. I think often when we split up the way I was just saying that we split up, what happens is an idea is thrown out, and then you have to rush to get there, even though you've got people that you might could bring along with you if you took enough time to listen to what they want to bring to the table or listen to their concerns or their complaints. And I worry we don't do that enough. And I think we've gotten into a bad habit in that regard. Then with regard to low-hanging fruit, I mean, I think we're going to need to truly look at transit corridors. But it needs to be, again, when we talk about timing, I think it's the kinds of things where it needs to be transit corridors that we anticipate are going to be built, so that people can come along with that. But I think that's the one of the first places we ought to look is how we're going to deal with those transit corridors, because the truth is, the rail system will fail if we don't have density in housing, and I don't think the voters voted to have a failing system. But the other truth is that there was a housing election involved in that, because there was a $300 million set aside for anti-displacement, and I feel like that is a signal that we wanted to have additional housing. So that procedurally we're going to have to make some changes, but that'd be my answer.
So I'll say the three dreaded words: land development code. So when do you think council might be ready to start developing a framework to tackle it comprehensively? And how do you get the community prepared to engage that discussion?
Well, I go back to my previous answer, and that is, I think we have to recognize that we've had a decade of failure when it comes to changing the land development code, which needs to be changed. Make no mistake, it needs to be changed. But the failure, in my view, was as a result of it being an all or nothing situation where there wasn't any room for compromise. You were either for it or you were against it, and that made you a good or a bad person, depending on what point of view you had. And we didn't look for those things that you could do where there's agreement. And I'm going to say that part of that discussion is that people get labeled in those discussions. People use language that labels people that may disagree with them. And when that happens, people lose any empathy. They just can't understand why someone disagrees with them. And the Land Development Code created a real morass of that. So I think that will come down to when we are willing to start the process of what do we agree on, why do we disagree on these things, and actually put it through a process that isn't a shove it down your throat kind of thing.
It's been an interesting day here, and I had the chance to be with you a little earlier today. But here in the room, there's folks coming from all different parts of the housing ecosystem. And one of the things that I noticed that was sort of an interesting, part of the conversation was, within the city and its management structure, just sort of the ability to create an expedited process with the ability to empower staff to really negotiate the regulatory give and gets and between utilities and planning and really support and move more aggressively in the development of affordable housing. Wondered if you had any thoughts about that. I know it's more of a management side issue.
Well, no, but that's something I talked about all during the campaign and bring to this, and that is that where I started this conversation was I was saying we need to be organized to get results. And this is one of the key areas where we haven't been organized to get results. So a couple of things that will be coming down, I think, pretty quickly. I think you're going to see an effort to redo the Development Services Department by first starting off with an examination of what works and what doesn't work, and listening to the community about what works and what doesn't work. And then moving into what we need to do to make that change. I would anticipate that we will ask probably a third party to help us with that, so that it takes a little bit of the politics out of it and makes it more just a heads up analysis of what you need to have happen to get the results. And part of that is just to ask the question, why have we waited so long? You and I were talking earlier today about this topic, and one of the things that I told you is the number one issue that I hear about on getting things started and permitting. The number one issue is getting electricity hooked up, and I will tell you, for the life of me, I can't understand why that's the number one thing that I keep hearing about. So that question has to be asked, and then just get it fixed. But you're going to see a real effort to change the way that process works, because we need to create results.
Well, thanks for being willing to engage the community. As I was listening to folks, if you engage, so we got about 250 people in the room. So if you ask them, you'll probably get about 700 opinions about how to approach that.
I think you're a little low on that, but okay.
Probably. So, at Housing Works, we're annually reviewing progress on the city's strategic housing blueprint goals. We know that we're falling behind on our goal to ensure the geographic dispersion of housing and ensure that more people can live in higher opportunity areas. We really talk a lot about all types of housing for all types of people, all parts of town. What can we do meaningfully to ensure that more people have the ability to live in every part of this city, including areas where we've historically built the fewest number of housing units?
Well, I would say three things immediately pop to my mind when you say that. One is that I think we need to create programs that incentivize living up to the blueprint. And I've said this before, that one of the things I would like to see us do is, if whatever is the jurisdictional lines that you want to use, whether it be the single member districts or something else, if that area is beating the blueprint, it's building faster, building affordable housing, meaning it goes faster or even more than what the blueprint calls for, then there ought to be a reward to that. And that reward could be in the form of, you're building tax base, so you get to keep more of that tax base for things like rental assistance or anti-displacement strategy, sidewalks, whatever it might be. That's one thought. We need to come up with, and that may not be the best thought, but we need to come up with ways that incentivize this sort of activity. And let's face it, if that side of the coin is an incentive, it's a stick on the other side, because people aren't getting that, and they're going to want to know why they're not getting that extra benefit. Second thing is that we need to be looking at, when developments are coming in different parts of the city, especially in those areas that aren't meeting the blueprint goals, is that as part of what the city does in giving approval, there needs to be added into that how we might provide affordable housing. And that might include even using the bond money that the city has passed over time to somehow help, almost a public-private partnership sort of thing, to help get more housing in those areas. And then the third thing I'd say is that public land, we ought to use the public land in different parts of the city, so that what we do is we make sure that there's affordable housing. We take advantage of the fact that it's public land, and put on that the kind of affordable housing that we want to help meet those goals.
So I appreciated changing topics. I really appreciate this morning having the opportunity to be with you, and I appreciated early on your clear direction to the Housing Authority, the City of Austin, that we would emphasize helping to address homelessness. Yeah. And your direction, the Housing Authority this morning provided 300 vouchers that would be project-based to help chronically homeless persons, with 100 of those going to chronically homeless vets. So we're very excited about that and appreciate your leadership on that.
That's great.
But you've been very clear, we're going to do more. And homelessness is a complex challenge and one of the major issues that we need to tackle. How early on are you anticipating we can collectively come together to help support your efforts? And what do you see there too as sort of the low-hanging strategy, fruit that we should be pursuing to try to make a difference?
I appreciate that. I will anticipate that within the next month to 6 weeks, we'll be in a position to try to talk about a collaborative with a number of jurisdictions and entities and partners, where we add to the continuum. This morning I got to ask a question, and I talked about the continuum. I feel like in Austin for the past little bit, we've been given again an all or nothing choice, and that is people sleeping on the streets anywhere, anytime, or permanent supportive housing. And don't get me wrong, we need more permanent supportive housing. But in the meantime, trying to get to that permanent supportive housing, we've got a lot of people that don't have access to services, including behavioral health services. We have a lot of people that are living on the street that have no shelter whatsoever when the elements are the way they are. So what you'll see is soon, I hope you'll see a focus on that part of the continuum. The good news, I think, is that even though I think it's been not the best way to handle it, and I think it's been bad news to have this one or the other for so long, the other is getting built. We're seeing things come online, and I'm pointing at Caritas, and others are building permanent supportive housing so that if we build the continuum that I'm talking about, what will happen is there will be a back door, and I mean that in a good way. People can come into that, they can get access to services, and then there'll be a back door that will lead them into permanent supportive housing, so you won't keep having this big gap we have, which we've had for too long. So I hoped it would be sooner than it is, but like you said, it's been in 8 weeks. So
I appreciate also today you got asked a question about the Salvation Army, and I think folks in this room would deeply appreciate, I think, hearing straight from you. You took a very strong and dim view of what happened with the Salvation Army, and I wonder if you could share that with the group today.
Well, I'd been in office about 3 weeks when they showed up to tell me they were going to announce on February 1st that they were going to close, and they were going to be closed by the end of February. And I pushed them to delay that. I went to the city manager and told him, believing that there would be something happen in that world. But then I encouraged them to even let the city continue using that building. Okay, even if you're done, let us use the building for things like a temporary diversion center or whatever we might need and want to use it for. And that was rejected because they're going to try to sell the building, and I guess they're worried that there would be homeless people there. I don't know, which I thought was kind of appalling and odd for that agency. In addition, I was promised they were going to take care of the people that were there, and that doesn't look like that's going to turn out to be true. So I'm very disappointed in the way that was handled. I think it clearly adds to our burden of addressing the needs of people that are living homeless on our streets, and we'll look at different ways that how we handle that. But ultimately, we have to handle it from making sure that people have a place to be.
Appreciate your leadership on it. If you care about housing, you've got to care about transportation. Care about housing, you got to care about education, and certainly about job training and the workforce, and as well as healthcare. You've been a leader on transportation policy and solutions for years. How do we work to ensure that TxDOT understands our community's concerns regarding Interstate 35 expansion? What do you think we can reasonably expect to get in terms of a compromise, and what are your top priorities as that evolves?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we've been negotiating with TxDOT for a decade, and that sometimes gets lost in this discussion. In 2017, TxDOT was still talking about adding lanes to the upper deck, and I was able to talk them out of that, and now we have no upper deck at all. So there's been significant progress. The east-west crossings have been changed from something that was just basically a sidewalk to a much bigger, much nicer for pedestrian traffic and for bicycles, just better connections. I forget the name of the roads, but the access roads. The access roads have been redesigned in such a way to create a boulevard sort of access road through the city, and it's all been dropped. Not all, most of it, a big part of it has been dropped, so that if the city can come up with the money, we will be in a situation where you can cap that road with green space and maybe even be able to build on it and increase tax base. The point being, there's been a whole lot of change that doesn't get emphasized. The road doesn't work as a road. And what's interesting about when we talk about affordability, one of the things that happens when Austin is not as affordable as we would like is people move out of Austin to Round Rock, Georgetown, Buda, Kyle, San Marcos. We say it all the time. Those of us that advocate affordability, it's our mantra. You're making people move out of Austin. But once they get out of Austin, we're not going to do nothing to get them back in. And that's a problem when you talk about transportation and affordability. This will allow managed lanes. Now, it's not the way I would like to see it done, because I would like to see them managed as toll lanes, because we know that works better all over the country in terms of allowing for transit. But that's not going to happen. So the best we're going to get for right now is HOV lanes, with the commitment that they'll be designed so that if, let's say, administrations change in the state of Texas, we can turn them into toll lanes and use them for better management. That will allow for better transit. It will also allow for there to be vehicular cars travel better. It also will allow for us it will not be perfect. It will not be my concept of perfect. It won't be your concept of perfect. But it will make that road a much nicer roadway in the middle of our city, especially if we can put caps. But even if we can't put caps, it won't be the same scar we have there right now. TxDOT has done more in listening than they typically do. And I think they're listening now. And I think that you'll see, I'm talking to them about additional crossings, things of that nature. And I think my hope is you'll see some more of that. But ultimately, the difficulty is the choice we're left with is either nothing, in other words, what we've got, or something significantly better, although not perfect.
So we've saved the three most important questions for last that I've been asked to ask of you. So folks here are just itching to know, what's your favorite Austin band?
You know, if I was a really good politician, I wouldn't answer that question, right? Gary Clark Jr., and in fact, I was so excited when I don't know whether y'all saw him in the Super Bowl ad. He was in the Super Bowl, and I kind of yelled out when I saw that. I really like him a lot. And then Gina Chavez is somebody that I think a lot of, and am really excited the way her career seems to be taking off.
Same question. You got a favorite taco joint?
Yeah, Julio's at Duval and 43rd. In fact, I think they thought that I had opened up a campaign headquarters at Julio's for a while there, but I need to go back.
So we all know you spent about 15 minutes in Houston. So question is, what's your pick for the Final Four?
Oh, my Lord. Well, Baylor.
Who win? Okay.
Just got to say that out loud, right? You know, I don't know. That's a hard question that I'm not ready. But Houston needs to be in there, but I don't know beyond that.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Mayor,
I've been a little busy to really keep up with the basketball tournament right now. Yeah, which is disappointing, but that's where I am.
Well, you can join the Housing Works unofficial pool.
There you go.
Going. Mayor, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you all. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.